Hi, I'm Casey Frashante, professional astrologer, and we're back. We're so back. Neptune is still squaring my Mars very widely, as is Saturn, but I woke up about a week ago not feeling the effects of it. I feel great. I feel energetic, excited, glad to be making videos again, and even back to like studying astrology because I kind of, put it on the shelf for a bit. And I wanted to make a video today, kind of walking you through the process of what I do when I evaluate a chart. A big reason I didn't get into astrology properly as deeply as I did earlier in my life was because I found it hard to get a straight answer anywhere. Whenever I would watch content on astrology, I really didn't know who to trust because everything just seemed like it was all very relative to the astrologer. And yeah, like I said, it's difficult to get a straight answer. When I would look at my own chart, I wouldn't really know what was talking. Was it my sun? Was it my moon? Because the moon was in my fourth house and my sun is in Cancer, and there's this weird kind of correlation there with Cancer like traditionally ruling the fourth house. So it was all this kind of like noise. There was a lot of noise when I was getting into astrology. And what I wanted to do as an astrologer was kind of cancel out that noise and focus on what really matters. And this is something that really grinds my gears when I see other astrologers or people claiming to be astrologers do with their practice. And it's their own practice, they can do whatever they want. But there's just so much noise. And with noise comes kind of like a Chinese whispers thing where who knows what is actually true, which, yeah, it's astrology, so it's probably bullshit anyways, according to who you're talking to. Um, but it was just kind of like it all becomes very misconstrued and yeah, not very conducive to the art. And astrology is really simple once you kind of think for yourself and put the pieces together for yourself. And I got my method um, for chart evaluation from these two books by Richard Eiderman. Through the Looking Glass, it's at the back of the book in this one, and I can't remember where it is in The Magic Thread. But he goes through this kind of this process that I've never, still haven't seen any other astrologer doing. So give him props. I mean, he's dead, but like he is the one that kind of pioneered this for me, and it made a lot of sense for me. And when you get into astrology, you might hear a lot of things about if all of the planets are on one side of the chart, this means one thing. If all of the planets are above the horizon, meaning above the ascendant descendant axis, or this means the person is more publicly orientated, and if they're all below the horizon, this person is more private. Yeah, there is some kind of validity to that, but he breaks it down into something called orientation, which is personal, social, and universal, and this applies to the signs and the houses. I'll give you a visual aid in a minute. And the chart I'm going to be evaluating today is Virginia Roberts Giuffre. She's the woman that kind of I maybe want to say she was the loudest voice in the whole Epstein thing. She was one of his victims and kind of, I don't want to say like the main victim, but she was the one that kind of came forward and gave the most detail about what happened. She was kind of always on the news. I don't really know what you call this type, like a spokesperson for victims of sex trafficking. And so she's also dead. But there was a posthumous uh, memoirs of her has released recently. It's called Nobody's Girl, and I read this a couple weeks ago. And this is what I essentially do and how I've kind of honed my skill in astrology. And what I would recommend other astrologers do as well is read a memoir or biography or autobiography. That would be better because it's coming straight from the person themselves if they have an accurate birth time as well. And you will find a lot of biographies will state their time of birth. That was actually the first time I ever saw a um, birth chart was in a Britney Spears biography I got from the library. And I remember opening it and seeing her natal chart in the front, and I was kind of like, what is that? And then when I was reading the biography, it was talking about like her rising sign and planets, and I was kind of like, I remember thinking like this is bullshit, and I was probably like 8 years old or something. So that's funny, but yeah, I like to read memoirs, biographies, autobiographies, um, and have their chart and kind of go through the moments in their life and look at what transits, solar arcs, and progressions were active for them during that time and learn it that way instead of relying on uh, astrological cookbooks which tell you, oh, Pluto in the sixth house means this. Just do your own research and put the pieces together yourself, and you'll see how it kind of manifests differently for each person based on their natal promise. So we're going to look at her chart today, and I'm going to walk you through the steps of how I evaluate what's important and what really isn't important. And all right, let's get to it. And it might be a bit hard for me to annotate this, but I'll do my best. So I start off with a wheel, a blank wheel, just because I don't look at out of sign aspects. The only aspects I look at are um, totemic aspects and in sign. I don't bother with the out of sign aspects. Again, it's too much noise. I'm trying to cut down on how much information I'm getting from the chart. The first thing I'll do is I'll look at obviously angular planets because they're really loud. They're going to be on the in the first house, seventh house, or around the 10th house or around the fourth house. And if we look at her chart, we can see she has the sun conjunct the ascendant, and she's a triple Leo as well. Sun conjunct the ascendant, and that tells you something straight away as an astrologer. Sun conjunct the ascendant in Leo, and then she's also got that Leo moon in the first house. And I know because I've already looked at her chart, these planets aren't making any negative aspects. Her sun is actually unaspected. But when planets in any sign are making only positive aspects, you're only going to interpret that as having the positive qualities of that sign. And so, just a very kind of quick interpretation of her rising sun sign, moon sign was that she was someone that really wore her heart on her sleeve. This is someone totally, uncorrupted and almost innocent in a way. Just because, again, there's no hard aspects to her sun. If there were hard aspects to her sun, ascendant, moon, then I wouldn't be using those keywords. But this is clearly someone that really lived authentically and wore her heart on her sleeve. Anyways, so she's got the conjunction to her ascendant, and I look at conjunctions first, and then she's got this conjunction with her Venus and Mercury in Virgo. She's got another conjunction between Pluto and Saturn, another one between Jupiter and Uranus, and that's it for conjunctions. And so, right off the bat, this is someone with one, two, three, four conjunctions in a chart. No stelliums, but people with stelliums or a lot of conjunctions in their chart, they're going to be very kind of focused and self-focused in a way. There's more color. I find there's more color to these people's personalities just because when you think about what a conjunction is, it's essentially a Siamese twin of two planets. These are planets where if they are struck by a transit or a progression, they're struck together, especially if the orb is really close. They're struck together, so they're triggered at the same time. Think of it like striking two bells that have different frequencies. There's more color in the sound of that. So people with conjunctions, more color to the personality, typically. And also when things trigger these conjunctions like transits, there's more happening in their life. They tend to have more like just activeness in their life and events happening around them or to them, just because there are two planets being triggered. This can happen with oppositions as well. The oppositions being triggered by transits and progressions and stuff, but because oppositions are worked out in relationships, this can typically happen to someone else in their life, whereas the conjunction is typically talking about them. I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'll look at conjunctions, and then I'll typically look at something minor, like not minor, but like I'll look at sextiles, and I also use colors in my analysis as well. I have a printout. I print out every chart and I do it manually, draw in these aspects manually. And I use color just because I don't have a photographic memory, but I have a very visual memory. And so I can picture someone's chart in my head and I can remember there was no yellow or blue on this person's chart. And I use blues for trines, obviously. And I can remember that and be like, oh yeah, this person had a really kind of a gritty kind of chart because I only had like squares and junctions and opposite. That's just how I remember things. So again, this is how I evaluate a chart and I use color. And so when I look at the sextiles in a chart, she's got a sextile between her moon and Pluto and Saturn. She's also got a sextile between these planets and Neptune, as does everyone like born in the past 100 years has a sextile between Neptune and Pluto, but I won't really worry about that too much, so much as she has the sextile between Neptune and Saturn, because not everyone has that. She has a sextile between Neptune and Saturn. Just clarifying that. And I think that's all the sextiles that she has. And then next I'll look at trines, which are blue. She's got a trine between her Venus and her midheaven. And so with Venus ruling her midheaven, making a trine to a midheaven. Oh, can you see this? Oh, I wonder if I can move this. Hold on. I don't think I can. This bar thing is in the way. Anyways. Okay, there we go. Wait. So trines. Trine between the ruler of the midheaven to the midheaven. This tells me someone is going to be likable. because the ruler of their midheaven is making a positive aspect to their midheaven. If it was the opposite, if it was a hard aspect, this person can be a bit unlikable or kind of interpreted as being off-putting or something like that. Especially if it's Venus. If you have Venus squaring the midheaven, people probably aren't going to like you. Venus trining the midheaven, regardless of if it rules the midheaven, people are going to like you typically. She's also got a trine between her ascendant and Uranus. And then she's also got a trine between her moon and Neptune. And I think this might be the closest aspect in her chart as well. And then I'll look at oppositions, but she doesn't have any. Oppositions are orange in my eyes. She doesn't have any oppositions. That tells me a lot. This is someone that has four conjunctions and no oppositions. That tells me something. I would write that down. So I have a chart printed up. I would write down at the bottom of the page, I'll write no oppositions because, again, that tells me a lot. Her Pluto sextiling her Neptune means nothing, but the fact that she has no oppositions is very important. The fact that she has four conjunctions is very important. And then if we look at squares, which is the last aspect I will look at, squares are purple. Um, she's got a square between Mars, Pluto, and Saturn. So I'll draw this in. And a square between Venus and Jupiter and Uranus. And this is where it can get kind of messy. But when there is a aspect grid at the bottom, the bottom at the bottom of the page, I will notate that in marker as well, just for added clarity. And then she's also got a square between Mercury and Uranus, but not Jupiter. So I'll just kind of try and specify that it's just Mercury to Uranus and not Jupiter. Even though she has Venus conjunct Mercury and Venus is square Jupiter, Mercury is not square Jupiter. And the orb of influence I typically allow is kind of, I do the traditional kind of orbs. I'll do 10 for a conjunction, again, only in the same sign. Oppositions, I'll do 10. I'll do 10 for an opposition, only in opposite signs. Trines, 7 or 8 degrees. Obviously, the tighter the orb, the more this is like prevalent in the personality. Squares, 8 degrees. Sextiles, 5 degrees. Those are the kind of like standard things. And then if there are quincunxes or inconjunctions, up to 2 degrees, and only for relevant planets. I don't really care if, Mars is inconjunct Venus and they're 4 degrees. Like I won't even bother to look at that. But again, that's me. Do whatever you want. This is how I evaluate charts. So I'll draw in the aspects and then I'll go around and I'll look at dignities. So that you might know dignities as, the sun is happy in Leo, the sun is unhappy in Aquarius, and things like that. And what I do on my piece of paper is I'll draw a heart or a broken heart. That's going to be too difficult for me to draw with my trackpad, so I'll just do a tick and a cross. So and I'll just start anywhere. So sun in Leo, sun's happy in Leo. Venus in Virgo, that's in its detriment. Venus isn't happy there. Mercury in Virgo is in its sign of domicile. Mercury's happy. Jupiter's happy, again, in its sign of domicile. And then she's got this Mars in Cancer, which is in its fall, not happy. And then this is where and this is just what I do. This is not what Richard Eiderman does or anything, but this is what he does, and this is what I got from his books. He'll then look at the orientation of he'll look at the orientation of planets in signs and stuff. And oh no, actually, I'll look at modality. Modality is the cardinal, fixed, mutable, and the way you do it according to him. You can do whatever you want. The way I do it according to him is the sun gets 2 points, the moon gets 2 points, the chart ruler gets an extra point, every other planet gets a point, 1 point, nodes don't count, and there should be 13 points in total. So I'll just, on the printed out version of the chart, I'll write C, F, and M, and I'll just notate that on off the side here for you guys to see. C, F, M, cardinal, fixed, mutable, and I'll go around just starting with whichever planet is most angular. In her case, it's the sun. The sun gets 2 points, but she's Leo rising, so it gets 3 points because the sun is her chart ruler. So 1, 2, 3 for fixed. The moon gets 2 points. 4, 5. And then I'll look at the other fixed signs. So Leo, nothing in Scorpio, nothing in Aquarius, nothing in Taurus. 1, 2 for the sun, an extra point, 3, because it's a chart ruler. 4, 5 for the moon. So I'll write 5 next to fixed. Next, I'll just do mutable. Venus gets 1 point, Mercury gets 1 point, Jupiter gets 1 point, Uranus gets 1 point, Neptune gets 1 point. And that's all she's got for mutable. So I'll write another 5 next to the M. And then cardinal, what she got in cardinal, she's got 1 for Cancer, that Mars in Cancer, 2, 3 for Pluto and Saturn in Libra. And that's all she got. So I'll write a 3 next to the C. And then, 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13. We've counted everything. I wouldn't say she's lacking cardinal because she's got 3 points for cardinal, but she's clearly a fixed mutable type. And I use that. I don't know if he uses that. I can't remember. I use something called type, kind of like a Pokemon. And then I'll look at the elemental balance in a chart. So I'll write fire or just an F, earth, E, air, A, water, W. So fire, earth, air, water. And I'll do the same thing, like counting the same way. You don't count the ascendant, you just count the chart ruler. So the sun, being in Leo, is a fire sign. 1, 2, 3. The moon, 2 more points because it's the moon. Sag, 5, 6 for Jupiter, 7 for Uranus, and I'll write a 7. Wait, no, I counted something wrong, I think. Sun, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for Neptune as well, because Neptune is in Sag. Yeah, so it's an 8. Sorry. So I'll write an 8 next to the fire. Then similarly to Earth, 1, 2 for Neptune, 1, 2 for Venus and Mercury in Virgo, and then nothing in Taurus and nothing in Capricorn, so she's got 2 for Earth. And then around 2. Air, she's got those 2 planets in Libra, nothing in Gemini, the nodes don't count, nothing in Aquarius, so I'll write 2 for air. And then water, she's just got this Mars in Cancer, so I'll write a 1. And because it's a 1, that to me is a singleton. A singleton, according to other astrologers, is a planet that has no major aspects 90 degrees from it, so it doesn't trine anything, it doesn't sextile anything, it's only opposite something. That's a singleton. It could, like, the only aspect it makes is an opposition. Yes, that is still a singleton, but based on the terminology that Richard Eidemann uses in his books, I also refer to singleton planets being a planet, the only planet in a certain modality. So if it's the only planet someone has in a fixed modality, that's a singleton. If it's, in her case, the only planet she has in water, that's a singleton to me. And then I will notate that in brackets, and I'll write the glyph for Mars, so I know it's a singleton. And then I'll also circle the Mars on the printed out version as well. And I'll usually do that in like a neon color. I'll just circle it like that. And then I'll look at the orientation. This is where it gets confusing, and it took me a couple times of going over his instructions to figure it out. And I'll give you an introduction on basically what the orientation even is. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there's personal, social, universal. Personal is personal planets and houses. Houses 1 to 4 and signs, signs and houses. Houses 1 to 4, signs Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. That's the personal orientation. Obviously, based on the name alone, if somebody has a lot of planets in houses 1 to 4 or in signs Aries to Cancer. This is someone that's more self-directed, and might ring some bells of when you hear if all the planets are on the eastern side of the chart, meaning the actual western side that you're looking at. If they're all split down the middle on the left side of the chart, this person is more self-directed. Again, yes, but in my opinion, it's because of the houses 1 to 4 being kind of loaded. Personally directed, their life is more geared towards themselves. Similarly, houses 5 to 8 are social houses, signs Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. These are social signs. If somebody has a lot of social houses or social signs in their chart, they're more geared towards other people. Again, you might have heard if all of the planets fall on the western side of the chart, meaning the right side of the chart that you're looking at. These are people that are, more social, again, because the social houses are filled. And then universal houses 9 to 12, signs Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. These are the types of people that are geared towards more like meaningful pursuits. They're not geared socially, intellectual pursuits. They're not geared socially. They're not geared towards themselves. And again, you can have a mismatch. You can have like personal houses loaded through universal signs. And so basically, the signs describe the mission that you're on, kind of the main themes of your life, and the houses are the areas that gets worked out. And so I'll explain Virginia's in a minute. So again, you count the houses and the signs the same way. So I'll look at the personal signs. Aries, nothing. Taurus, nothing. Gemini, nothing. She's got this one planet in a personal sign. So when I go personal, social, universal, and yeah, this is going to be difficult to annotate, but I do the signs first. And so I'll do a 1, and then again, I'll draw in this Mars glyph because it's the only sign she has in a personal, only planet she has in a personal sign. So there's, again, astrologically, there's something going on with this Mars. It's in its fall. It's the only planet she has in a water sign. It's the only planet she has in a personal, it's the only planet, it's in its fall. It's the only planet she has in a water sign. It's the only planet she has in the personal orientation. There's something going on with this Mars. I know that. And so once I, complete this, I'll go and I'll look more closely at the Mars and what the Mars is doing. And then if we look at the social orientation based on sign, Leo, 1, 2, 3. The moon in Leo, 1, 2, that's 5. 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'll write a 9 for social. And again, 9's a pretty big number. 9 out of 13 is however many of percent. She was probably more of a social person. And then if we look at universal, she's got 1 for Jupiter, 1 for Uranus, 1 for Neptune, and that brings us to 13. And then I'll look at the houses, so I'll just do a slash. And then I'll look at the planets in the houses again. So personal houses 1 to 4. She's got 5 for the sun and moon, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. She's got 11 for the personal houses. And so as you can see, she's got 1 personal planet, but her personal houses are full. So she's living out, we already know she's, dominant in the social orientation for the planets. She's living out a social kind of problem in a personal way. That's kind of like a very general interpretation you can do on someone with an orientation like this. And then, social, she's got that 1, which is the Neptune. So again, yeah, this Neptune is kind of like a singleton. And we haven't even, like, the Neptune was such a nothing burger before, but now in the interpretation, I'm thinking, okay, I need to pay more attention to that Neptune because it's the only planet she has in a social house. So I'll put a 1 for that Neptune, and then I'll draw the Neptune glyph. And then universal, again, that Mars is, yeah, the only planet she has in the universal orientation. So there's something going on with Mars, potentially something going on with Neptune, and that's kind of all the prep work that I do. And then I'll look more deeply into the rulerships of these planets. And So I wonder if I should erase some of this stuff. Yeah. So the I write all of that stuff on the paper, and then also no, I'm not done. So I'll look at whatever's dominant. You can have people that have, all the planets for the most part in like the cardinal orientation, and they have no Earth, and that will tell me something. And so if she was lacking, she is lacking water. So I will kind of like notate that with a star, and I'll write at the bottom of the chart low water, and I'll consider low to be like three and under, two and under. Again, it depends from chart to chart. Because she only has one planet, that's obviously very low. She's overcompensating in uh, matters of emotion. And when someone's lacking water, that tells me an astrologer something. And I'll also, so she's dominant in fixed and mutable energy because they're both five. And then out of all of the elements, she's highest in fire. And I wouldn't, sometimes people have like a duo kind of type. Like I'm an air water type. Again, like a Pokemon, I'm like an air water type. And that tells me as an astrologer that air water types kind of they're able to bring perspective and distance to feelings when she's not a duo type. She's kind I would classify her as a pure kind of Leonian type. She would be kind of a Leo Sag kind of mix, but because she's a triple Leo and she's got the sun in the first house as well, and it's conjunct the ascendant. This is someone that is all kind of Leo, based on the high fixed modality and the fire modality. Yeah, I wouldn't really lean to the Sag thing. She's all Leo. That is kind of like that. I call that her kind of like chart signature. My chart signature is a duo Gemini Cancer mix because yes, I'm a Cancer, but my Cancer Sun isn't angular. It's not doing too much in my chart. So I'm kind of like a duo type, and she would just be a pure Leo type. Maybe I'll do another video with someone else's chart if you guys need more assistance on how you can look at, other people's charts and not someone that's kind of straightforward like her. And so what I have written here is basically I have the Leo glyph in the bottom corner, no oppositions, low water. Again, that tells me so much more than her having Neptune sextiling Saturn. Because some astrologers might really focus on that. I wouldn't, because having no oppositions tells me a lot more. Her being low in water tells me a lot more. Again, I'm trying to cancel out as much noise as possible to focus on what I consider to be really important. And so if I erase all of this and kind of just give you, um, yeah, like a tutorial on what I would focus on. So we already know that Mars is really loud. Mars is trying to say something. Again, it was a singleton like three different times, and it's in its fall, and it's in the 12th house, the house of kind of, suffering, something she can't access, and it's squaring these guys pretty tightly. I think, yeah, so no, her tightest aspect in her chart is her moon sextiling her Pluto that has a 10-minute orb, but then her Mars squaring her Pluto is less tighter and it's separating, but it is a 17-minute orb as well. And, squares have more punch to them. And you want to look at the difficult stuff in someone's chart as well, because that's kind of where their superpower is. Squares, you can be a victim of, but you can also master them, and they can be your, greatest achievements, basically. So she's got this square going on between these planets. And when you consider the fact that Pluto rules her fourth house, I correlate the fourth house with the father. Some astrologers correlate it to the mother. I find that this is kind of I think there's just confusion involved because obviously when you're talking about the father, there has to be a mother as well. And so they can kind of speak for each other a lot of the times. But in my experience, very literally, the fourth house is often the father. I see this time and time again. I haven't found one example where the fourth house was actually the mother. And if it is kind of the mother, it's because, the dad wasn't around. So it had to kind of be correlated back to the mother in some way. But then if something is aspecting the fourth house, it's aspecting the 10th house. Do you know what I mean? The fourth house is the father in my experience. And when you consider Pluto's ruling the fourth house, and the fourth house is ruled by Scorpio, Mars is also Scorpio's co-ruler, and she's got her two co-rulers of her fourth house being her father in square, an aspect of conflict. Yeah, this is telling me a lot about her dad. Allegedly, it says in the book he did stuff to her. It's alleged, I wasn't there. in the book he's still denying it. Like I think the author interviewed him for his input in the book, and he's denying it. You can come to your own conclusions based on the chart and what I have to say about the chart. Um, Pluto square Mars is difficult to deal with anyways. These are people that feel the need they have to fight to survive, and with Saturn there as well, this is someone that is kind of so yeah, the background of Virginia is that she was allegedly, abused by her dad, and then she was sex trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. But if you read the book, she was sex trafficked by some other guy before him, like really strange stuff. Sex trafficked by some guy before him. Obviously, she was like a teen runaway as well, so stuff happened on the road. Uh, the Pluto square Mars is kind of this real kind of fight for survival. Sexual violence can often be a theme, though not always. Um, Pluto can kind of kill the Mars impulse as well. And if Mars was in a sign like Aries, where again, I talk about planetary dignity a lot, if Mars is in a sign like Aries, where Aries is able to stand up for itself and fight, this might be someone that's more of a perpetrator. If Mars is in Cancer, that's kind of scared of standing up for itself and it's square Pluto, this is someone that doesn't have any Martian impulse because Pluto has kind of killed the Martian impulse and like who's Pluto? It's her father. And Mars rules men. If it's squaring a planet that rules the fourth house of the father, this is kind of like this screams like daddy issues to me, especially when Saturn is there as well. Saturn represents authority figures. Saturn also traditionally rules her seventh house. I'm going a bit fast, I know. But this is all just kind of like it's all coming together. I don't need to focus on her Chiron. I don't need to focus on the sun sign as much as I do with her like that being her dad. I already know who her dad is in this situation. And so again, this is telling me a lot. This is not a perpetrator, this is a victim based on the science. And again, you don't even need to focus so much on exact like nitpicking all of this information. If you read someone's biography, autobiography, and you just look at the signs involved and the aspects involved, it all becomes pretty clear. You can tell a lot by the fact that she has a pretty major square between planets involved in the Cancer Libra square. That's very different from an Aries Capricorn square. The Cancer Libra square is going to be someone that's unable, regardless of the planets involved, the quality of that square is someone that's unable to kind of cope, unable to stand on their own 2 feet, yielding, indecisive, easily swayed, especially when it comes to their own emotions, or, in her case, with it being Mars, her own sexual impulses, her own will of survival, her own will of standing up for herself. Because again, Mars square Saturn can have a hard time standing up for itself, or it can be the perpetrator, or kind of like a bully, again, depending on the signs involved. Mars in Cancer in its fall, yeah, she was going to be the victim of the men in her life, especially with Saturn ruling the seventh house. Like, see how it's all kind of coming together. And yeah, so Mars square Pluto, what other themes are there? Um, Relying on manipulation as well can be a thing, like relying on manipulation to survive. And again, Mars in its fall in Cancer, and then Mars in the 12th house. This is not a forceful Mars. This is not someone that is going to be able to stand up for themselves physically either. Uh, Again, it's things compounding, and I've said in my previous videos, you'll see things in a chart that just reiterate the same things over and over and over and over again. Again, as an astrologer, that it tells me what I need to focus on. If I see the same things over and over and over again in a different way, that is clearly a major theme in someone's life. I'm not going to focus on something I see once. That's kind of, again, why would I bother if there's bigger problems for me to solve? And then, yeah, like repressed rage, the repressed feelings of being abandoned. This is that square that she's dealing with. Um, there's, Mars, Pluto again can, like, depending on the signs, can kind of, their sexual expression is kind of based on the sexual undercurrents at the time. Uh, so all that kind of thing. And then, she's got the Mars square Saturn as well, and that would have to do with kind of fighting against authority based on the signs being Cancer and Libra. I would say that's her fighting for authority in her relationships. Saturn in Libra says a lot. Saturn in any sign is going to tell you a lot about the individual and their struggles and where their mastery lies and what they need to work on and where their kind of greatest faults are as well. I would always look at Saturn and the sign Saturn is in, and if it's retrograde or not, to tell you that will give you about 25% of the person's entire kind of life, destiny, personality, whatever you want to call it. This is someone with the square to Saturn. between Mars and Saturn is someone that is scapegoated, dominated. That's a huge theme. Um, they can kind of put themselves through a lot to test themselves to see how strong they really are. And again, like with Pluto there, that's intensifying that, or they are put in situations that kind of test their survival instincts a lot. Um, Someone that can is either going to bully the underdog or stand up for the underdog, depending on the signs. Clearly, Cancer Libra is going to be the underdog and is going to stand up for the underdog. They're not going to be the bully, again, just based on the signs. Um, and with her being a woman as well, and I know this isn't politically correct, with her being a woman, again, we can kind of look at that Mars as being, yeah, very kind of um, limp because women typically don't identify with Mars. If this was a man's chart, you might interpret it in a different way. But yeah, with it being a woman's chart, as far as I know, she was heterosexual as well. This Mars would represent the men in her life. Um, so yeah, being dominated by the men she's in relationships with, and I'm saying relationships with Saturn ruling the seventh. Um, yeah, women tend to project this aspect a lot. Any aspects between Mars, unless they're ruled by Mars, but even then, who really knows? They tend to project these aspects. So she was the one feeling dominated by the partners. Um, and then even a Pluto Saturn conjunction can say a lot. This people born with these with aspects between Saturn and Pluto, particularly the hard aspects, there's always some kind of a lesson, a karmic lesson about survival and about their relationship with authority, a strong reluctance to want to be in charge, um, really feeling kind of persecuted as well. It's a really kind I call it kind it's like a rotten aspect. It's very kind of problematic society. Not saying people with these aspects are problematic, but there was a lot of problems in society when these people were born, and that can show up differently in someone's chart. Again, if this is angular or ruling an angular house, this is more of a problem than someone that has it kind of, randomly connected in their chart. So, as you can tell based on basically everything I was just saying about her, that and based on what I know about her life, there's plenty I'm sure I don't know. Um, this is what I would focus on. Like, if she was coming to me as a client and wanted to talk about money, I would obviously focus on planets in the second house. Maybe the Saturn ruling her sixth house and Venus ruling her 10th house is in her second house, so that would be a different conversation. She also has, difficult planets, difficult aspects to that Venus as well, with it being Uranus, and that kind of shows up in the biography, um, as well. Like she's got this square between Venus and Uranus, and that can with Venus ruling her 10th house, and it's in her second house of income, and um, she has um, Mercury squaring Uranus as well. I erased that, but this is squaring that Uranus as well, and this Mercury rules her second house. So these planets are like very tied into her like income and whatnot. With it squaring the Uranus. Also, this is really interesting. With it, with Venus, not Mercury, but Venus, also squared Jupiter and Jupiter and Uranus conjunct. This is someone that has a lot of money coming and going, not really a steady kind of income. And that was kind of not elaborated on in her book, but it was spoken about in her book. She didn't really have like a proper like steady job that she would go to because obviously based on things that happened to her in her life. As far as I could tell, she kind of just worked here and there, and but then she got sick towards the end of her life as well. A lot of people think she was taken off the planet. Her official rule of death is suicide. Again, I wasn't there, I can't say, but she does talk about towards the end of the book some really difficult health issues she was having at the time, and I personally think that is enough for anyone. That's even if they said like I would never do this, you know, I think everyone kind of knows people that have said like I would never do that, and then they end up doing it because of the things that they were experiencing in their life. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But yeah, like money coming and going, very unstable with Uranus. Things are unpredictable. Money coming, going, no real steady work. Again, you need to kind of work to get money. And towards the end of her life, she was getting really sick. I can imagine she was probably not having any money as well. And then financial difficulties from not working, but people with a connection with between Jupiter and Uranus, that's the kind of like sudden windfall aspect. That's the lottery aspect. If you don't have an aspect between Jupiter and Uranus in your chart, you're never gonna win the jackpot. You're never gonna win the lottery. It's not promised you in your chart. And it's interesting that she has this aspect, the conjunction, which is neutral, but because it's squaring Venus and Mercury in her second house of income, there would be difficulty tied to that if compared to if there were trines or sextiles. If there were trines or sextiles, this is someone that kind of wins a lot and wins enough to kind of sustain their lifestyle. But even in like court cases, especially with Jupiter ruling her ninth house of um, law and legal issues, she kind of got a lot of her money, as far as I can tell based on the book. She got a lot of her money from court battles and settlements and things like that. But it was also like, how much money do you need to spend to go to court? And then how much money do you win back? And how much does that actually pay off your court fees? And then, you've got obviously travel expenses, I guess, as well. If you're going, I've never been involved, but like something like that. So again, the money, there was probably at times in her life, huge settlements that would help her out financially. But then how much of that actually gets kind of spent back on, like is put back into future court issues and legal battles and everything like that. So I was just saying, like, if I wanted to focus on her finances, again, that's kind of right there based on what I know about her in the book. But yeah, I wouldn't focus on, you know, the trine between her moon and Neptune. While that's, a lovely placement to have, and it's one of her tightest aspects, which means that essentially just means she was really sensitive and emotionally kind of psychic, and the sextile to Pluto as well, really kind of understanding of people. That's lovely, but I think the square between Mars and Pluto and Saturn is far more important and tells far more of the story than that trine and the sextile between her moon and Neptune and Pluto. And yeah, Neptune, even as the singleton I mentioned at some point, that being the only planet she has in a social sign, again, social house, social relating with others was probably very Neptunian. Again, her past is kind of shrouded in mystery. Even if you read the book, people aren't really named. There's not actually that much detail relating her relationship. She talks about her relationship with, the guy that sex trafficked her and his accomplice and stuff like that. But it was not, the story is still very vague. We actually still don't know that much about her, of who she was associated with, really. So many different, and again, everything I've said is all alleged. It's coming from the book, don't shoot the astrologer. So yeah, I think that's kind of all I have to say about her chart and how I evaluate a chart. I hope this is kind of like cohesive again. I probably will make a video in the future using someone else's chart. But yeah, I hope that was helpful and gave like greater insight as to how I kind of work as an astrologer and how you can kind of use these methods to, yeah, cut out any noise and focus on what is actually important in someone's natal chart. Again, if you're interested in Chiron, look at Chiron. If you're interested in sextiles, look at the sextiles. You don't need to do whatever I tell you to. You don't need to tell me that I'm right or if I'm wrong. This is what works for me. And I found it to be really helpful when I read the Richard Eiderman books, and I really resonated with him as an astrologer. I would say he's probably my favorite. He made the most sense to me. If this makes sense to you, that's great. I'd recommend getting those two books again, The Magic Thread and Through the Looking Glass by Richard Eiderman. I think they're both available on Amazon. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.